the slow disappearance of choice. I never imagined how quietly freedom could slip away. When I lived in my own home, a modest, sunlit cottage at the edge of town, I made decisions every day, and most of them felt small. When to get up, what to wear, whether to have tea or coffee, whether to spend the afternoon reading, or to take a walk through the park. Those tiny choices made up the rhythm of my life. They gave each day its own texture, its own heartbeat. But when I moved into the senior living facility, that rhythm changed. Not in a loud, abrupt way. No one came in shouting orders or locking doors. It was far more subtle. That's what made it so dangerous. At first, it felt organized, structured, meals at regular times, medication reminders, scheduled activities. But within the structure, I began to realize I no longer had real say in how I lived my life. Breakfast is from 7 to 7:30. If you're not hungry then, it doesn't matter. Lunch is at noon, whether your stomach agrees or not. You want something simple like toast and jam at 10 a.m.? That's outside the plan. You ask, they smile kindly and say, maybe it's snack time. I remember one morning waking up a little later than usual. I'd had trouble sleeping the night before. I wanted to lie in bed just a little longer, the way I used to do on Sundays, but the knock came. Time to get up, Mrs. L. I wasn't sick. I wasn't in danger. I just wanted 5 more minutes of stillness. But 5 minutes wasn't on the schedule. From that moment, I noticed it everywhere. My clothes were labeled and washed with dozens of others. Some came back missing. My favorite blouse replaced by something that wasn't mine. I wasn't upset, not at first. But it kept happening. And slowly, I stopped caring what I wore. I began to wear what was handed to me. Choice, the kind I had taken for granted my whole life, was being traded in for efficiency. Even walks outdoors required coordination. I couldn't just grab my sweater and head out. I had to wait for a staff member, and if they were busy, I waited. And sometimes, I gave up waiting altogether. No one was cruel. No one was trying to hurt me. But in trying to take care of me, they had also taken away something essential. My agency. That's what they don't tell you when they say, you'll be safe here. Yes, safety has its place, but it comes at a cost. The cost is freedom. The freedom to live imperfectly, to nap when you want, to cook something badly, to choose silence over bingo, solitude over structure. And once that freedom starts to fade, so does something inside you. If you're thinking about moving into senior care, I ask you this. How much of your day is still yours? How much of it do you truly control? Because in the end, it's not just about meals and medicine. It's about identity. And identity, my friend, is built one tiny choice at a time. Feeling forgotten. I used to think that distance couldn't change love, that no matter where I lived, whether it was the home I built with my late husband or a room in a senior facility, I'd still hold the same place in the hearts of those I cared about. And for a little while, I believed that was true. When I first moved in, the visits were frequent and warm. My daughter came every Tuesday. My grandchildren brought homemade cards and stories from school. My son called in the evenings just to check how my day had gone. There were flowers on my bedside table, fresh-baked cookies dropped off with a hug and a smile. I felt seen. I felt remembered. But slowly, everything changed. The visits became less regular. Phone calls turned into voicemails, voicemails into unread messages. Sorry, Mom. This week was crazy. Grandma, I'll come next weekend, I promise. Something came up, but we're thinking about you. At first, I defended them, even to myself. Life is busy. They have children to raise, jobs to manage, errands, appointments, and stress I no longer have to carry. I understood. I really did. But understanding doesn't quiet the silence. It doesn't fill the long afternoons when no one knocks on your door. It doesn't change the sting of watching other residents get visits while your room stays empty. It doesn't stop the ache in your chest when holidays come. and go, without the sound of laughter or the smell of home-cooked meals. One Thanksgiving, I waited all day with my nicest blouse on, the one my granddaughter said made me look elegant. I sat by the window, eyes tracing every car that pulled into the lot. None of them stopped for me. It wasn't that they stopped loving me. I truly don't believe that. It's just that when you're not part of someone's daily life anymore, it's easier to forget you're still waiting to be included in theirs. In this place, time slows down. Days stretch. Evenings are quiet. You begin to measure worth not by what you do, but by who still shows up. And when fewer people show up, you begin to wonder if you matter. That's the hardest part of growing old in a place like this. Not the aging, not even the aches and routines. It's the fading. The slow fading from memory, from attention, from the world that once revolved around you. If you're considering a nursing home, either for yourself or someone you love, I beg you, think about this. Moving someone to a safer place physically should never mean leaving them behind emotionally. Because once you stop calling, once you stop visiting, we don't just feel lonely, we feel forgotten. And that kind of loneliness lingers longer than anyone imagines. Losing my sense of purpose. When I packed up my things to move here, I told myself it was just a change of address. New walls, new routines, same me. But I couldn't have been more wrong. What I didn't realize, and what no one warned me about, was that this move would slowly unravel the thread that held my days together. Purpose. Back home, I woke up with intention. Not some grand, heroic mission, but the kind of purpose that lives in the small things. Watering my garden, even if it was just a few potted plants on the porch. Writing a list of groceries. Fixing a loose screw on the kitchen cabinet. Sending birthday cards by hand. Folding towels just the way I liked them. Even setting the table for one. None of it was urgent. None of it would win me awards. But it all made me feel useful. Now in this place, there's nothing to fix, nothing to plan. The plants aren't mine, the meals are cooked, the laundry arrives in neat uniform stacks, and someone else folds the towels, not quite the way I like. At first I thought it would be a relief. "Now you can just rest," my daughter said. "You've earned it." And yes, for a few days, it felt like a well-deserved break. But the break never ended, and I began to realize something haunting. When there's nothing left to do, there's nothing left to be. I started waking up later, not because I was tired, but because there was no reason not to. I skipped breakfast sometimes. No one noticed. No one needed me. My hands, once busy with tasks, lay idle in my lap for hours. I met a man here named Charles. He used to be a high school teacher for over 30 years. In his first few weeks, he brought books to the lounge and offered to start a reading circle. But no one showed up. Eventually, he stopped asking. Now he just sits quietly with a crossword puzzle, half finished, on his tray table. One afternoon, he looked up and said, "Funny thing, they take care of everything, and somehow I feel like I don't exist." That line stayed with me, because I knew exactly what he meant. You don't realize how important purpose is until it's gone. It doesn't have to be loud or visible. It just has to matter, to you. Without it, the days blur. The mind slows. The soul dims. If you're considering senior care, especially for someone you love, don't just ask about safety or comfort. Ask about meaning. Do they still have something to wake up for? Someone who counts on them? A reason to keep their mind sharp, their hands moving, their spirit alive? Because here's the truth no brochure tells you. A life without responsibility might sound peaceful, but a life without purpose is just waiting. And when waiting becomes your new full-time job, you begin to feel less like a person and more like a shadow of who you once were. declining health faster than expected. Before I moved into senior living, I wasn't exactly in perfect health, but I was holding my own. I had my routines. Every morning, I stretched beside the bed before my feet even hit the floor. I walked around the neighborhood, slow but steady. I cooked my own meals, chopped my own vegetables, and wiped down the counters after every meal like clockwork. That movement, those routines, they kept me going. They kept me alive in a way I didn't fully understand, until they were gone. When I moved in, everything was set up for comfort. No need to worry anymore, they said. We'll handle everything. And they did. The meals were prepared, the rooms cleaned, there were buttons to push for help, rails on every wall, chairs with arms to help you stand. It felt like a gentle embrace at first, but what no one tells you is that too much help can slowly steal your strength. Not all at once, not loudly, but gradually, like water wearing away stone. The first few days I still walked the halls. I told myself I'd use the facility's small gym, maybe even join the movement class. But then one day, I decided to skip the walk. It was chilly, no big deal. Then I skipped again. After that, I began accepting help more often. Let me get that for you, Mrs. L. Dot, and I'd smile and say thank you. I thought I was just being polite. I didn't realize I was also surrendering a little more independence each time. Then came the stiffness, the shortness of breath, the weakness in my knees when I stood up too fast. I wasn't in pain, not exactly, just slower, less stable, more tired, more often. One morning I dropped a book on the floor and struggled to bend down. That's when I realized something had changed, not overnight, but steadily. I used to be strong enough to live alone. Now, I wasn't sure I could even manage a day on my own. And I wasn't alone in this. I watched it happen to others too. People who once arrived walking tall, slowly transitioning to canes, then walkers, then wheelchairs. Not because they were sick, but because they stopped using the strength they still had. There's a cruel irony in that. The very support designed to make life easier can also make your body forget how to support itself. If you're thinking about senior living, for yourself or a loved one, don't just ask about services or care plans. Ask, will I still be encouraged to move, to stretch, to stand, to push myself even just a little? Because when everything is done for you, the body begins to believe it's no longer needed. And the truth is, a body unused is a body that unravels. I don't blame anyone. The staff meant well. My family wanted me to rest. But if I could go back, I would have fought harder to stay active even when it was hard, even when I didn't feel like it. Because now I know, the less you do, the less you can do. And once your strength is gone, getting it back is a mountain few ever climb. The loss of privacy and dignity. In all my years, I've learned that dignity isn't something grand or dramatic. It's not about awards, applause, or being in charge. Dignity lives in the quiet, personal spaces of life, the places no one else sees. For me, it was the freedom to close a door and be alone, to sit in my own bathroom without having to ask, to take a shower when I wanted, how I wanted, not when someone told me it was time, to get dressed without feeling observed or assisted. At home, those things were sacred. They were small, but they were mine. But when I moved into this facility, that quiet dignity began to slip away. It started with the shared space. I was placed with a roommate, a kind enough woman, but not someone I chose. I didn't know her rhythms, and she didn't know mine. She talked to herself late at night. She liked the lights on. She snored loudly, and even though I tried to adapt, it never truly felt like my space again. My room didn't smell like home. It didn't sound like home. It didn't offer the peace that privacy once gave me. And then there was the constant presence of staff. Again, kind people, compassionate, helpful, but still, they came in often to check vitals, to deliver medication, to clean, to knock, and sometimes not wait for an answer before entering. I remember the first time I needed help using the restroom. My hands were stiff that morning, and I pressed the call button. A young aide came in, smiled, and offered her arm. She wasn't disrespectful, but the shame I felt, it was unbearable. Not because of her, but because of me. Because for the first time in my life, I couldn't do something so basic without assistance. And even though she never judged me, I judged myself. When someone helps you dress, you lose the right to linger in your favorite sweater. When someone else picks your meals, you lose the quiet joy of choosing your craving. When you're spoken to like a chart number, not by name, not with memory, just with procedure, you start to feel invisible. Dignity, I learned, isn't lost in one big moment. It slips away with each small thing you surrender. Not out of choice, but out of need. And once it's gone, it's hard to get back. No one talks about how dehumanizing it feels to always be monitored, how humiliating it is to wait for permission to do things you've done independently for over 70 years, how it chips away at your sense of self, not just your comfort. If you're considering this life, ask yourself honestly, how much privacy are you willing to trade for support? How much control are you prepared to lose for the sake of convenience? Because no matter how kind the staff, no matter how safe the facility, there is no substitute for the quiet, personal freedom of living life on your terms. I wish someone had told me that before I came here. I might have fought harder to hold on to the simple, sacred dignity of being in charge of my own life, right down to the smallest detail. Realizing it's harder to leave than you think. When I first moved into this senior facility, I told myself it wasn't permanent. I remember saying it out loud to my daughter, "Let's just try it for a few months. If it doesn't feel right, I can always go back." She nodded, hopeful. I was hopeful too. That's what made it easier to sign the forms, to wave goodbye to my house, to box up the memories and hand over the keys. I convinced myself I had options, that nothing was final. But here's the truth no one tells you. Once you walk through those doors, leaving isn't as simple as it sounds. For one, my house, the place I called home for nearly 40 years, didn't just sit there waiting for me. Maintaining it was too much, they said. The lawn grew wild, the pipes needed fixing. Eventually, the decision was made without me. My daughter and son sold it, thinking they were helping. "We wanted you to have peace of mind," they said. But what I really needed was a way back. And it wasn't just the house that was gone. It was the life I had within it. My garden tools donated, my books packed in boxes I never saw again. Even my dog, Max, who couldn't come with me, rehomed with a neighbor. By the time I realized I wanted to leave, there was nowhere to return to. But even if there had been, I wasn't the same. In here, I got used to being helped. I stopped cooking, stopped cleaning, stopped walking more than a few feet at a time. I stopped trying, because everything was done for me. And in the process, I lost confidence in my ability to live alone again. Could I handle the stairs? What if I fell in the shower? Could I even carry groceries anymore? I began to doubt the very things I had once done without thinking. That's what this place does. Not out of cruelty, but out of kindness. A kindness that slowly teaches you to become dependent. And once you start depending, the thought of being on your own again becomes terrifying. Even financially, things get complicated. The cost of care adds up, savings go down, resources get reallocated. And before long, even if you find the strength to leave, you may not be able to afford to. I've met others here who feel the same. "I only came for rehab," one woman told me. That was 4 years ago. Now, she's still here. Not because she loves it, but because leaving would mean stepping into a world she no longer feels equipped to handle. And that, my friend, is the trap no one talks about. Moving in feels like a choice. Moving out often doesn't. So if you're considering this path, ask yourself and ask your family, not just, can I go in, but can I get out if I need to? Ask what your exit would look like, what options you'd truly have, what life you'd be returning to, and whether it would still be yours. Because once you settle in, once your life is packed away, your home sold, your habits softened, leaving becomes not just a decision, but a mountain. And sometimes, by the time you realize you want to climb it, you've already forgotten how. What I would do differently if I had the chance. Growing old isn't something I fear. Not anymore. In fact, I see it as a privilege. A quiet reward for having made it through the storms of life. The wrinkles on my face, the stiffness in my joints. They all tell stories of laughter, struggle, endurance, and love. No, I don't regret growing older. But I do regret assuming that moving into a senior living facility was the only way to age gracefully. When I first arrived, it seemed like the right decision. Everyone around me, my children, my doctor, even friends, said it would be safer, easier, more comfortable. And it was, for a while. But what I didn't understand back then, and what I see so clearly now, is that there's a hidden cost to comfort. And it comes in the form of quiet surrender. At first, I gave up control over when I ate, then when I bathed, then how I dressed. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. But little by little, I stopped making decisions entirely. Not because I couldn't, but because someone else always made them for me. And in the process, I lost something more valuable than convenience could ever replace. I lost my sense of being needed, of having purpose, of still owning my own life. Now looking back, I wish I had paused longer before agreeing to the move. I wish I had explored more ways to get help, without giving up my autonomy. I wish someone had asked me, what do you still want control over, instead of just assuming what was best? To those watching, especially if you're facing this decision for yourself or a loved one, listen carefully. Don't be rushed. Don't make this choice out of guilt or fear. Ask the hard questions. And above all, honor the value of independence, even in its smallest forms. Because the truth is, once you give up those small freedoms, getting them back is far harder than you think. So fight for them while you still can.